Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we are going to be jumping into the heart of what it means to be an American right now.
Ooh, that sounds exciting.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what we find. We're going to be looking at a Reddit thread, and the title is, As an American, How Do You Feel About Your Future?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty intense stuff, and um, the responses are really diverse, a lot of different perspectives.
That's really interesting because it's kind of like taking the temperature, of a
Yeah,
country.
the national psyche.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what kind of emotions are coming up. What are people saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, right off the bat, um, you see a lot of raw emotion. And it's not just like, oh, I'm a little worried about this or that. It's like
Mm.
deep fear, uncertainty,
Mm.
even anger.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in.
So it's not just like a surface level concern. It's really like
You know,
it,
deep-seated.
it was
Deep-seated. And it's interesting because it's not just about personal anxieties,
Mm.
right? Like it's not just about like, oh, I'm worried about my job or my family. It's also this kind of collective disillusionment, like a loss of faith in the American dream, a distrust of the government.
Yeah, it seems like there's this feeling of like a loss of control, right?
Yeah.
That things are kind of spiraling and they don't really know how to stop it.
Exactly. And that feeling of powerlessness that really comes through, and some of the responses are really striking.
I bet.
Some people are even comparing the current political climate to being in an
Oh.
abusive relationship,
Wow.
talking about feeling manipulated and isolated and not knowing how to break free.
That's a powerful analogy.
It is, and it really speaks to the level of despair that some people are feeling.
Yeah.
But what I find really fascinating is that there's also this clear generational divide
Right.
in the responses.
Hmm.
Older generations, they seem really surprised and disappointed by where we are as a country.
Yeah, like they can't believe this is happening.
Right. But younger generations are almost like, yeah, well, this is what we expected. Um,
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's almost like they've grown up
Yeah.
with a different reality.
right.
Like they've always known that things weren't perfect.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe older generations had
Wow.
this idea of America being this.
This shining beacon on a hill, and now,
Exactly. And now the cracks are showing.
yeah, now it's like, wait a minute, this isn't what we signed up for.
And that difference in perspective can be really hard to bridge.
It is. It creates this communication gap that's,
That's
difficult to overcome.
yeah.
To really get a sense of, how deep these emotions run.
Yeah.
Um, I think it would be helpful to look at some specific voices from the thread.
Yeah, definitely.
So are there any responses that like really stood out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. One that I found really powerful was from someone who talked about feeling numb from just the constant barrage of negative news. They said, it's been less than a month and I've already reached a sort of numbness. I guess that's what happens when you have a 9 out of 10 anxiety level every single waking moment for 3 weeks straight.
Wow.
So you
Yeah.
can just imagine.
Like their nervous system is just fried.
Totally fried.
It's like, you know how after you go to a loud concert and you have that ringing in your ears?
Yeah.
But it's like that constantly.
Exactly. It's like that, but all the time with the news and the state of the world and everything.
Yeah, moment do they feel numb? It's like a
You get
defense
the-
mechanism.
Exactly. You can only take in so much negativity before.
Your brain just shuts down.
Right.
Another one that really resonated with me was from a federal employee. And they were talking about this experience they had with a black family who was visiting their workplace. And they said, this is a family that belongs to a group who can count their misfortunes and struggles in centuries. And they're dealing with the same events we are, but no doubt with the knowledge that they are far more the target of what seems to be coming than I am.
Yeah.
Yet they still respond with faith. I wish I had a fraction of that faith, that strength. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains.
It's so powerful because it really highlights the resilience of certain communities.
Absolutely.
They've been through so much historically,
Yeah.
and yet they still find a way to have hope.
And it's like that contrast between the despair that we're seeing from a lot of people
Yes.
and that unwavering faith. It's just incredible.
It's inspiring, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And it's also a reminder that while what's happening is affecting everyone, it's affecting certain groups more than others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of systemic inequalities.
Right. And we can't forget that.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Okay, this next quote, this one gave me chills when I read it. Someone is drawing a parallel between what's happening now and what happened after the Reconstruction era.
Oh, wow.
And they said, Learning about what happened in the South during Reconstruction is what eliminated this worldview for me. After the Civil War, black people were given the right to vote in the South, and there were black congressmen and senators. Black people enjoyed freedom before Jim Crow and segregation were enacted. Then there wasn't another black senator until the 1960s. This part of history is rarely taught because it conflicts with the America's always marching towards a more just society narrative.
It's so true, though, and it's like
Yeah.
it makes you question this idea of progress, you know?
Yeah, like, are we really always moving forward?
Is it really linear or is it more cyclical?
Yeah.
And it makes you think about, what can we learn from the past
Yeah.
so that we don't repeat the same mistakes?
Right, and it really highlights the importance of critical thinking.
Totally.
We can't just assume that things are always getting better.
Right. We have to be willing to look at the complexities and the nuances of history.
The uncomfortable truths.
Exactly.
Oh,
And that's what helps us understand where we are today
exactly.
and where we might be headed.
And how to avoid, making those same mistakes again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, speaking of uncomfortable truths, there's this other quote from a woman who's pregnant with her first child. She says, I'm pregnant now with my first child, a daughter. I'm terrified for how she will grow up.
Oh, gosh. It's just heartbreaking,
Uh-huh.
It's like this fear that the next generation is going to inherit an even worse world than we did.
Yeah, and I think that fear is something that a lot of parents can relate to right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially, with everything that's going on.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that even though there's all this fear and despair in the thread,
Right.
there's also this little spark of resilience.
There is. It's like people aren't giving up hope entirely.
No, they're not. Like this one person said, energized, I refuse to be defeated by this administration.
Yeah, it's like a refusal to be a victim, you know.
Right.
They're taking back their power.
Yeah, and that manifests in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are talking about getting involved in local politics,
Right.
Supporting grassroots organizations, finding strength in community.
It's about focusing on what they can control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And someone else said, get a library card and use it. Learn skills that will help you or your family grow your own food if you can. Get involved with nature centers, community centers.
It's interesting because it's like a very practical approach to preparing for an uncertain future.
Yeah, it's like, okay, if things are going to be bad, at least we can be prepared.
Right.
Have some skills, have some resources, have a community to rely on.
Exactly. And that community aspect is so important because we're stronger together than we are alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, you've talked about fear and uncertainty and resilience, but there's also this raw anger.
Yeah, there's a lot of anger in this thread.
That comes through in a lot of the responses.
And rightfully so. People are angry about what's happening to their country.
Yeah, they feel like they've been lied to and betrayed.
Exactly. And that anger can be a powerful motivator.
It can, but
Yeah.
it can also be destructive.
Right. So it's important to find healthy ways to channel that anger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do we do that?
Well, some of the commenters suggested things like engaging in constructive dialogue, getting involved in political activism,
Right.
holding those in power accountable.
So using your voice, basically.
Exactly. And making your voice heard.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that change doesn't happen overnight.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right. It takes time and effort and persistence.
Yeah.
And, there's just one quote that really stood out to me. It's from someone who is financially well off,
Okay.
but they're expressing this deep sadness for the future of people who are less fortunate.
Mm.
They said, fine about my and my family's future. I'm very financially well off. Really feel bad about most other people's future. I actively worked my butt off to get the smart, competent lady elected who would take more of my money and give it to kids needing to go to preschool. Instead, we're getting an end to NATO HIV treatment in Africa, and they're about to take away some food stamps and health insurance from poor children and give me another tax cut. What a time to be alive.
It's a really powerful statement because it shows that even people who are doing okay,
Right.
they're still worried about the future of the country as a whole.
Yeah, it's this recognition that we're all interconnected.
Right. And that we can't just ignore the struggles of others.
Exactly.
Right.
And it also highlights the importance of advocating for policies that help everyone.
Yeah, not just the people at the top.
Right. And as we go deeper into this thread, it becomes clear that there's this longing for connection.
Yeah.
People are craving community.
They want to feel like they're not alone.
Right. And that's where the power of community really comes in.
Absolutely. A lot of people are talking about the importance of connecting with like-minded individuals,
Hmm.
finding support groups, building local networks.
It's about creating spaces where people can feel safe and supported.
Yeah, where they can share their fears and their hopes.
And their ideas for the future.
Right.
And that's really what gives me hope,
Yeah.
is that even in the midst of all this fear and uncertainty,
Yeah.
people are still reaching out to each other.
They're still trying to find ways to connect and to make a difference.
Exactly.
So we've talked about all these emotions, fear, anger, resilience. But what do we do with all of this? Like,
Yeah.
how do we go from feeling overwhelmed to actually taking action?
Right, because knowledge without action, it doesn't really get us anywhere.
Yeah, it's like we're stuck in this loop of knowing things are bad, but feeling powerless.
Exactly. And that's where I think this Reddit thread offers something really valuable. It's
Mhm.
not just about venting, it's also about brainstorming solutions.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like, people are sharing concrete ideas and resources.
Right, and it creates this sense that we're not alone in this,
We're all in this together.
Exactly. And one commenter put it this way: get involved with local politics, volunteer with local grassroots organizations in your area, donate money, time, skills to causes you care about.
That's a good point. Like, instead of getting bogged down in the national stuff, focus on what you can actually impact,
Right. Your community, your neighborhood.
where you can make a tangible difference.
Exactly. And another commenter said, get a library card and use it. Learn skills that will help you or your family. Grow your own food if you can. Get involved with nature centers, community centers.
It's about being prepared, being resourceful, building those connections,
Right. And it's not about running away from the problems. It's about facing them head on.
but in a more empowered way.
Exactly. And then there were some commenters who suggested a more confrontational approach. One person said, call your representatives, protest, and learn protest safety. Boycott billionaires, stop shopping with Walmart, Amazon, Starbucks as much as you are able.
Hit them where it hurts.
Right, their wallets and their public image.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we do have power, even as individuals.
We do. And when we use that power collectively, it can create real change.
Yeah. And then there was this one comment that was pretty blunt, but I think it's worth sharing. Stop making excuses. Things will be inconvenient. That is the point. If you're not willing to make fairly easy sacrifices to help the good of humanity, then you're no better than the people voting these clowns into office.
Oof. That's a tough one, but it's true.
Yeah, it's a call to action, We can't
Yeah.
just sit back and complain. We have to be willing to do the work.
Exactly. And I think that's the ultimate message of hope that comes from this thread, is that even when things feel hopeless, we're not powerless.
Right.
We have the power to make a difference.
Through our choices, our actions, our beliefs.
Exactly.
So what does all of this mean for our listeners?
I think the takeaway message is this: you are not alone.
And you have more power than you realize.
And the future isn't set in stone. It's something we create together.
Yeah, I love that. This deep dive has been a roller coaster of emotions, but it's definitely left me feeling inspired.
Me too.
Like, the challenges are real, but the human spirit, that capacity for resilience and compassion and collective action, it's still there.
It is. And if you're feeling inspired to take action or to connect with others who share your concerns, we encourage you to check out Shauna Pelage's YouTube channel or connect with the Voices of the Soul community on Facebook.
Yeah, let's keep this conversation going, because together we can make a difference.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, remember, your voice matters, your actions matter, and your hope matters.